me back.
Thanks for coming back. I appreciate your output, your writing output. You write a lot, so that gives me more chances to book you on the show.
Cool. I appreciate you reading me. Appreciate anyone reading it. So,
Wherever you guys are watching or listening, there is a link in the description to Alex's recent and Jacobin. Um, the fast food sector succeeded in securing a $20 minimum wage while broader efforts like Prop 32 failed. What unique factors, such as worker organizing or public perception, contributed to the success for fast food and then I guess the failure for Prop 32, in your opinion?
I think most important thing to recognize about these two pieces of legislation, Prop 32, which the failed one, which didn't bring us a higher minimum wage across sectors, was a ballot proposition, and the other one, legislation that was a legislation that went through our our assembly and our Senate, and it's got signed by Gavin Newsom, who can kind of, governor who can do no wrong in the eyes of liberals across America. So it's like you had kind of like, on one hand, you had a pretty kind of like technocratic process. Most people in this state, like most Americans generally, couldn't even tell you the name of their like assembly member, much less their state senator. They're kind of like operating in the dark a little bit. They can kind of, they can weigh the pros and cons. They can hear both sides, and they kind of made an assessment that said like, okay, yeah, like a higher minimum wage for fast food workers, that makes sense. That's doable. That's not gonna, that's not going to do a lot of harm to, that's not going to like kill jobs in great numbers or raise prices significantly. Um, and now that it's passed, I mean, the year after it's been on the books, it's that has shown to be the case, that it hasn't had a great like detrimental effect
Mhm.
for consumers or for workers. But that was one process, and that kind of worked. Although there's a backstory there, which we could talk about also.
Yeah.
But then the other thing, Prop 32, that went straight to the ballot, and so going straight to the ballot, you're dealing with voters who are voting on things basically without reading kind of like the white paper that's weighing the pros and cons, or talking to the experts or any of that. Or you're dealing with people who are like, well, you know what, that sounds like that's going to cost me more. Um, and like I don't feel like paying more. Don't they get enough? Don't, or maybe I am a low income worker. Maybe I am a low wage worker. This is going to cost my job, something like that. And so like the kind of the discourse gets a lot more simplified and streamlined. And anytime it becomes so simplified, it's a lot easier to appeal to people for emotional reasons, and kind of like your gut instinct says like, well, this is going to cost more than I think it's worth, so no. That said, it did fail pretty narrowly, so
Yeah.
that's
It was
something else we
close. It's like
we could point
51 to 4. It was 51 something to 49 something. It
right.
was a really close vote.
Yeah, it was really close.
But did this remind you a little? I don't know if were you in the Bay for Prop 20 or 22? Was that the one with
22,
the
yeah.
were
Yeah,
you around for that?
yeah,
Did
right.
did the discourse kind of remind you of that, where it felt like a lot of people were extremely misinformed, but it almost felt like there was a steadfast like anger in being disinformed. They did the little bit that they knew about the proposition was all they needed to know, um, and they just kind of went with it. Even hearing people say things to the extent of, you know, of course, Uber and Lyft are going to have my best interests at heart. I make money for them, and I was like, I don't think you understand how this works,
Yeah, yeah,
which is a hard conversation to have because you never want to call somebody stupid, and that's
yeah,
how a lot of times, even if you're not trying to, that's how it can come off.
yeah.
Do you feel the same thing was happening in this situation with the minimum wage hike?
I think so. I think there was a lot of, I mean, we are, whether we are in that state or not, I mean, there is this kind of general feeling of like scarcity, and it's kind of like, certainly the Trump election encouraged that. I mean, certainly, the Trump campaign encouraged that. And I mean, there are a lot of Trump voters in California. I mean, you know, solid blue state means like, you know, 55% and above kind of voting.
What is